When an ambulance rushed to save a sick teen, no one expected the biggest obstacle would be a woman named HOA Karen. Furious that the emergency vehicle was stealing her driveway, she called 911 on the ambulance. But what happened next left the entire neighborhood speechless. From viral chaos to poetic karma, this story is one wild ride you won't believe. Buckle up, because justice has a sense of humor. My name's Daniel Hargrove, and I've lived in the sleepy outskirts of Utrecht, Netherlands for the better part of a decade. It's a tidy little suburb. Row houses with neat lawns, bikes chained to fences, and the faint hum of canal boats in the distance. I moved here from the States to escape the noise, the chaos, the constant bickering of a world that never shuts up. I'm not what you'd call a people person. I keep my head down, mow my lawn on Sundays, and nod politely when the neighbors wave. That's me. Quiet, unassuming. The guy who'd rather watch paint dry than stir the pot. Our neighborhood, De Bloemenbuurt, is postcard perfect, at least on the surface. Tulips bloom in spring, kids ride scooters down the cul-de-sacs, and everybody knows everybody. But beneath the charm, there's tension. It's not the loud kind, not at first, but the simmering sort that bubbles up over petty things like untrimmed hedges or a car parked 2 centimeters over the line. And at the heart of that tension is Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of our homeowners association. Karen's an expat like me, but where I came to blend in, she came to rule. She's a tall, wiry woman with a perm that defies gravity and a voice that could shatter glass. She moved here from some gated community in Florida 5 years ago, and ever since, she's treated De Bloemenbuurt like her personal fiefdom. No infraction is too small for her wrath. Trash bins out past 8 a.m., a bike left on the grass, a dog barking 1 decibel too loud. She's the kind of person who'd report you for breathing if she could find a bylaw against it. And trust me, she's tried. Most of us just roll our eyes and let her rant. It's easier that way. But not everyone gets that luxury. The Van der Meers, a sweet Dutch Surinamese family 2 houses down, have borne the brunt of her nonsense since they moved in last year. Their teenage daughter, Aisha, is a quiet kid, polite, keeps to herself, always sketching in a notebook. Her dad, Ruben, works at the university, and her mom, Lena, runs a catering business from home. They're good people, but to Karen, they're those people. She never says it outright, not in so many words, but you can hear it in the way she nitpicks their every move. Their mailbox is too colorful, their cars too loud, their guests stay too long. It's exhausting just watching it. I've never said a word to Karen. Not once. I'm not a hero. I'm not even a meddler. I'm just the guy who waters his plants and minds his business. But all that changed on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in late March, when the universe decided I'd been quiet long enough. It started with the sirens. I was in my kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, when I heard them, sharp and insistent, cutting through the drizzle. I peeked out the window and saw an ambulance pull into the cul-de-sac, lights flashing. It stopped in front of the Van der Meers' house, tires crunching on the gravel. My stomach dropped. Aisha, I thought. She'd been sick off and on, some kind of autoimmune thing I'd overheard Lena mention at the grocery store. Nothing life-threatening usually, but enough to keep her home some days. I watched as 2 paramedics jumped out, a stretcher in tow. Ruben burst out the front door, his face tight with worry, waving them inside. Neighbors started poking their heads out. Curtains twitched, doors cracked open. It's a small street. Nothing happens without an audience. I figured I'd stay out of it. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Then I saw her. Karen Whitmore, storming down her driveway like a hurricane in a cardigan. She had her phone in one hand, her other arm flailing, and even from my window, I could hear her voice rising over the rain. "This is unacceptable! You can't park here! This is a private lane!" Oh no, I thought. Not now. The ambulance was half on the Vandermeer's driveway, half in the cul-de-sac. Not blocking anything, mind you, just not perfectly aligned with Karen's precious HOA rules. The paramedics ignored her, rushing inside with their gear, but Karen wasn't having it. She marched right up to the ambulance, banging on the side like it was a vending machine that ate her euro. "Excuse me," she shrieked. "Do you know who I am? I'm the HOA president. You can't just barge in here and disrupt the neighborhood." Reuben stepped out onto the porch, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a rabid dog. "Karen, please. They're here for Aisha. She's having a flare-up. We need them." "Don't you please me, Reuben," she snapped, jabbing a finger at him. "This is about order. You people think you can do whatever you want, don't you? Parking wherever, making noise. Where's your permit for this?" I couldn't believe it. Aisha was inside, probably struggling to breathe, and Karen was out here yelling about permits. I felt my grip tighten on the curtain. "Stay out of it, Dan," I told myself. "She's not worth it." But then it got worse. A car pulled up, a beat-up Fiat with a dented fender, and out stepped Jamal, a family friend of the Vandermeers. He's a big guy, mid-30s, always wearing a bright smile and a backwards cap. He'd been over a few times, helping Reuben fix up their garage. Karen spotted him like a hawk, zeroing in on prey. "And who's this?" she bellowed, stomping toward him. "Another unapproved visitor? This isn't a free-for-all, you know. We have rules." Jamal blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Lady, I'm just here to check on Aisha. What's your problem?" "My problem?" Karen's face went redder than a beet. "My problem is people like you thinking you can waltz in here and—" "Enough!" Reuben cut in, his voice cracking. "My daughter's sick, Karen. Leave us alone." That should have been the end of it. Any sane person would have backed off. But Karen? She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, or whatever the Dutch equivalent is, 112, I guess. Right there in the rain. "Yes, hello, I need the police. There's an unauthorized vehicle blocking a private lane, and these people are harassing me." Harassing her. I almost laughed. The paramedics were still inside. Jamal was standing there dumbfounded, and Reuben looked like he might cry or punch something. I'd had enough. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the soup simmering too long. Maybe it was the rain tapping my skull. But I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside. "Karen," I said, my voice louder than I meant it to be. She spun around, eyes narrowing like I'd just insulted her grandmother. "Who are you to—" she started, but I cut her off. "Shut up," I said. 2 words. Simple. Direct. I'd never said them to anyone in my life, not like that. The street went quiet. Even the rain seemed to pause. "They're saving a kid. Let them do their job." Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "How dare you!" That's when the cop showed up. The cop was a stocky guy, mid-40s, with a mustache that looked like it belonged in a 70s movie. He climbed out of his patrol car, adjusting his cap against the drizzle, and surveyed the scene. Karen waving her arms, the ambulance lights flashing, Reuben pacing on his porch, and me, the idiot who'd just told the HOA dictator to shut up. Jamal gave me a quick nod, like we were suddenly allies. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. "All right, what's going on here?" the cop said, his Dutch accent clipped and tired. He sounded like he'd rather be anywhere else, and I couldn't blame him. Karen pounced. "Officer, thank God you're here. These people," she gestured wildly at the ambulance, Reuben and Jamal, are violating HOA regulations. That vehicle is illegally parked, and this man," she pointed at me, "just threatened me." "Threatened?" I said, incredulous. "I told you to shut up because you're yelling at a sick kid's dad." The cop raised an eyebrow, looking between us. "Let's all take a breath, yeah? Who's sick?" "My daughter," Reuben said, stepping forward. His voice was steady now, but his hands were shaking. "Aisha. She's 16. She's having a flare-up, lupus. The paramedics are with her now." The cop nodded, then turned to Karen. "And your issue is—" "The ambulance?" "It's blocking the lane," she shrieked. "We have rules. This is a private community, and they didn't even ask permission." I couldn't help it. I laughed. It just slipped out, a short, sharp bark that made everyone turn. Karen's eyes bulged like I'd slapped her. "You think this is funny?" she snapped. "Kind of, yeah," I said, surprising myself. "A girl's sick and you're mad about parking. It's absurd." The cop rubbed his temple, clearly done with this circus. "Mevrou," he said to Karen, "an emergency vehicle doesn't need HOA permission. They're doing their job. Maybe you should let them." Karen's face went purple. "This is outrageous. I'm the president of this association. That's when it happened. Mid-rant, she clutched her chest, staggered back, and dropped her phone into a puddle. For a second, I thought she was faking it, some dramatic ploy to guilt us all. But then she gasped, a wet, ragged sound, and crumpled to the ground. The cop froze. Jamal swore under his breath. Reuben just stared. "Help!" I yelled, instinct kicking in. I ran over, kneeling beside her. She was conscious, barely, her eyes wide and panicked. "She's having a heart attack or something." The paramedics burst out of the Vandermeers' house right then, wheeling Aisha on the stretcher. She looked pale, an oxygen mask over her face, but stable. One of the medics, a wiry woman with a buzz cut, saw Karen and cursed in Dutch. "Wat nu weer?" "She's down," I said, pointing. "Chest pain, collapsed." The second medic, a guy with a beard, sprinted to the ambulance and grabbed a defibrillator kit. The woman knelt by Karen, checking her pulse. Heart attack. We've got 2 patients now." The irony hit me like a brick. Karen, who'd spent the last 20 minutes trying to banish the ambulance, now needed it to save her life. I stepped back, letting the pros work. They loaded Aisha into the ambulance first, then hoisted Karen in beside her. 2 stretchers, side by side, the tyrant and the teen. The doors slammed shut, and they peeled out, sirens wailing into the rain. The cop scribbled something in his notebook, muttered, "Never a dull day," and drove off. Jamal clapped me on the shoulder. "Man, you're wild. Shut up. To her, legend." I didn't mean to, I mumbled, still dazed. Reuben came over, his eyes red but grateful. "Thank you, Daniel, for stepping in." "Is Aisha okay?" I asked. "They think so. They're taking her to the hospital to be sure. And, well, Karen too, I guess." And we stood there, the 3 of us, soaked and stunned, watching the taillights vanish. I didn't know it then, but that was just the beginning. Word spreads fast into Blumenburt. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Neighbors whispering over fences, texts pinging in the community WhatsApp group. Someone had filmed the whole thing from their window. Thanks, Mrs. De Jong. And the video hit X by noon. "HOA Karen versus ambulance, epic meltdown," it was captioned. There I was, grainy but unmistakable, telling Karen to shut up. There she was, collapsing like a bad actor in a soap opera. By evening, it had 50,000 views. I tried to ignore it. I holed up in my house, sipping tea, pretending the world didn't exist. But the world had other plans. My doorbell rang at 10 a.m. Lena Vandermeer, holding a tray of homemade roti. "Daniel," she said, her smile warm but tired. "You're a hero." "I'm not," I protested. "I just got mad." "You stood up to her. No one does that." She set the tray on my counter. "Aisha's home now. Stable. They said it was a bad flare-up, but she's okay. Karen's still in the hospital. Heart attack, like you thought." I nodded, unsure what to say. "Glad Aisha's all right." Lena hesitated, then added, "The video's going viral. People are calling you the ambulance Avenger." I groaned. Great. It didn't stop there. By Friday, the WhatsApp group was a war zone. Half the neighbors were cheering me on. Finally, someone shut her up. While the other half, Karen's loyalists, were clutching their pearls. Such disrespect to our president. Someone started a petition to oust Karen from the HOA, citing conduct unbecoming. It had 30 signatures in an hour. Then the reporters showed up. A local news crew parked outside my house, and a perky woman with a mic asked for the hero's take. I shut the blinds and hid, but the X posts kept coming. Memes of Karen yelling, edits of me with a cape. Ambulance Avenger trended in the Netherlands for 2 days straight. I wanted to die of embarrassment, but part of me, buried deep, felt a flicker of pride. The neighborhood shifted too. People I'd never spoken to waved at me. Old Mr. Visser, who barely left his porch, brought me a bottle of Genever and said, "God gedaan, jongen." The Vandermeers invited me over for dinner. Roti, rice, and stories about Aisha's art. She showed me her sketches, shyly thanking me for saving the day. I didn't feel like a savior, but I smiled anyway. Karen came home a week later, weaker but still Karen. She didn't leave her house much, but the damage was done. At the next HOA meeting, held in the community center, packed to the gills, the petition passed. She was out, replaced by a quiet widow named Els who promised less drama, more flowers. Karen didn't show up to fight it. Rumor had it she was moving back to Florida. Good riddance. Weeks later, things settled. The viral fame faded. X moved on to the next outrage, and I went back to my routine. But I wasn't the same. Neighbors chatted with me now, not just nodded. The Vandermeers became friends, real ones. One evening, as I sat with Ruben on their porch, sipping beer and watching the canal, he said something that stuck. "You know, Daniel, Karen's not the only one. It's everywhere. People judging, picking fights over nothing. Skin color, accents, whatever. You stepping in. It wasn't just about the ambulance. It was about us." I shifted, uncomfortable. "I'm no crusader, Ruben. I just couldn't stand her yelling." "Maybe," he said, smiling faintly, "but you did it anyway." Aisha joined us then, her sketchbook in hand. She handed me a drawing. Me, in my jacket, facing a cartoonish Karen with steam shim coming out her ears. "For you," she said. "My hero." I took it, my throat tight. "Thanks, kid." And that night, alone in my kitchen, I hung the sketch on my fridge. I wasn't a hero, not really. I was still the quiet guy who liked his peace. But maybe peace wasn't just silence. Maybe it was knowing when to speak, even if your voice shook. The next day, I got a text from Jamal. "Heard Karen's selling her house. Party at mine when she's gone?" I grinned and typed back, "I'm in." And as I watered my plants that evening, I caught myself humming. De Blumenboort wasn't perfect. Nowhere is. Karen was just one face of a bigger mess, a world that loves to divide. But here, at least, we'd won a small battle. What came next? I didn't know. Maybe more Karens, maybe more fights, or maybe just roti and sketches and neighbors who'd finally learned my name. I'd be ready either way.